Hey, what's up guys? Today we are back with episode number 3 of our Nothing But Truck series. On today's episode, we will be looking at all the truck series from Volvo. Now, let's get into it. If you would like the history of Volvo trucks, we have an episode in our truck history playlist. Go check it out. From 1928 to 1930, Volvo came out with its first truck, the Volvo Lv4. The truck shared many components with Volvo's passenger cars OV4 and PV4, including powertrain, but the truck had a more powerful chassis, which was built on two different wheelbases. Despite the small 4-cylinder side valve engine, the truck was a sales success, unlike the passenger cars. The following year, in 1929, Volvo came out with their LV60 series, another light truck, but this one was different. Volvo realized that the company's first 4-cylinder side valve engine wasn't powerful enough, so the company brought out a more powerful 6-cylinder engine for its automobiles and trucks. The new LV60 truck was introduced in the summer of 1929. Apart from the larger engine and a 4-speed gearbox, it was identical to its predecessor, the LV Series 2. This series went until 1932. In 1931, Volvo introduced its first heavy truck. Unlike its smaller sibling, who used some elements from Volvo's passenger cars, the LV66 series components were built exclusively for truck use. These included a new overhead valve engine, a heavy-duty 4-speed gearbox, steel rims, and 4-wheel hydraulic brakes. The truck was built in two weight classes, the smaller LV68 and LV69, with a payload of 3.25 tons, and the heavier LV66 and LV67 with a payload of 3.5 tons. From 1933, the LV66 and LV67 could be delivered with a trailing axle, which increased the payload to 5.25 tons. The long wheelbase LV70 was primarily equipped with bus bodies. From 1933, the LV66 series were sold with the Hesselmann engine as an alternative. This series lasted until 1936. In the spring of 1932, they introduced the LV71 series. There were two weight classes, LV71 and LV72 with a payload of 2.5 tons, and LV73 and LV74 with a payload of 3 tons. The medium-sized truck series also included Volvo's first forward-controlled truck, LV75. The cab was moved forward so that the driver sat beside the engine, instead of the gearbox like a conventional truck. This gives better weight distribution between the front and rear axle, resulting in a reduced rear axle load. This series only went until 1935. In 1934, Volvo introduced its LV76 series. The truck was available in 3 versions, LV76 with a payload of 1 ton, LV77 with a payload of 1.25 tons, and LV78 with a payload of 1.5 tons. In 1935, the truck was modernized, with a streamlined radiator cover and the larger EC engine. In 1936, the series was supplemented with a sturdier LV79. This series went until 1940. In 1935, they came out with the new medium-sized truck, the LV80 and 90 series. The truck was available in 2 versions, the smaller LV80 series with a side valve engine and the larger LV90 series with an overhead valve engine. On this generation of trucks, the engine in the cab was moved forward, so that the engine was mounted above the front axle, not behind as before. This gives a better load distribution between the front and rear axle, resulting in reduced rear axle load. After a year, the older DC engine of the LV90 series was replaced by the bigger FC engine. Both engines were offered in Hesselmann version. This series also ended in 1940. At the beginning of 1937, the LV180, 190, and the 290 series, or also referred to as the long nose, were presented. The truck shared both front end and engine with the smaller LV90 series, while other components were sturdier to cope with heavier loads. Production ceased in 1943, and the LV180, 190 series was replaced by larger versions of the round nose. The long nose LV290 was Volvo's largest truck so far. With trailing axle, the gross weight could reach 13 tons. It had a new overhead valve engine. To cover the engine, the LV290 had an even longer bonnet than the LV180, 190 trucks. During the Second World War, many of these trucks had their engines converted to run on wood gas. From 1947 onwards, the LV290 series could be delivered with Volvo's pre-chambered diesel engine, VDB. On these trucks, the bonnet had been extended even further to accommodate the larger engine. A few trucks were fitted with the larger direct-injected VDF engine in 1951, before the long nose was succeeded by Volvo Titan. This series went from 1937 to 1951. In 1938, Volvo presented its LV101 series truck, affectionately known as the Sharp Nose. The two model series shared engines, radiator cover, and bonnet. The smallest model, LV101, was mechanically almost identical to the taxi cab, while the larger LV102 was a genuine truck. After the Second World War, Volvo updated the truck series with the stronger ED engine, renaming it L201, L202. This series went until 1950. The round nose was introduced in the autumn of 1939, in conjunction with the outbreak of the Second World War. The truck was originally built in three versions. The smallest LV120 series had the same side valve engine as the Sharp Nose. The larger LV125 series and the sturdier LV130 series had the same overhead valve engine as its predecessor, LV90. During the war, many of these trucks were equipped with wood gas generators. 1944 saw the introduction of the LV140 series with the big FE engine, which replaced the LV180-190 series. In 1946, the round nose became the first Volvo truck offered with a diesel engine. The LV150 series was equipped with Volvo's VDA pre-chamber diesel engine. All versions were updated in the early 1950s. The LV120 series became the L220 series with a stronger ED engine. The LV140 series became the L230 series with an improved A6 engine, and the LV150 series became the L245 series with a direct injected VDC diesel engine. This series lasted until 1954. The L340, introduced in 1950, was an update of the predecessor L201, L202. The mechanical components were the same, but the truck got a more modern front end, mimicking the contemporary taxicab PV831-832. This series lasted until 1956. A year later, Volvo presented its largest truck, the L-385 Titan, with a payload capacity of up to 10 tons. The large VDF engine was replaced in 1953 with the further developed D96 engine. The following year, the Titan became the first Volvo truck to be offered with a turbo diesel. In 1956, the truck was equipped with air brakes. This truck was later refined, but this truck line went until 1973. In 1953, Volvo introduced the L-385 Viking. The truck had a payload capacity of up to 8 tons for the heaviest trailing axle versions. The Viking truck was very similar to the larger Titan model. For the first model years, the Viking used the VDC motor from its predecessor L245, but it was soon replaced by the updated D67 engine. 1959 saw the introduction of the refined L-485 Viking, including a stronger chassis. From 1961, the truck was available with a turbo diesel. In 1964, Volvo introduced the forward control L-4851 Viking tip top with a tilting cab. When Volvo introduced its System 8 in 1965, the truck's name was changed to N86. Beneath the Viking cab, Volvo conducted extensive changes, including a new engine, a fully synchronized 8-speed gearbox, and a general updating of most components. This series went from 1953 until 1973. In 1954, Volvo introduced the medium-sized truck L-370 Brage, named after the Norse god Bragi. The truck had a payload of 4.5 tons. Brage had an overhead valve petrol engine. In 1955, a budget model called the L360 was added. It had a reduced payload of 3.5 tons and a side valve engine. The L360, which was never called the Brage, was discontinued in 1957. Early trucks had a non-synchronized 4-speed gearbox, but this was soon replaced by a synchronized 5-speed transmission. Demand for trucks with petrol engines declined with rising fuel prices, and the Brage model was discontinued in 1963. But this series ended in 1972. Volvo introduced its first forward-controlled truck, L420 Snabe, at the end of 1956. It had a payload of approximately 3 tons. The truck's V8 engine had been developed by Volvo for a planned luxury automobile called Volvo Fl in the early 1950s. A V8 engine in the lightweight vehicle meant impressive performance for a truck. The downside was the gruesome fuel consumption, and from 1964 onwards, the Snabe was offered with a diesel engine as an alternative. In early 1957, the program was supplemented with the larger L430 Trig. With sturdier chassis and suspension, the payload was increased to approximately 5 tons. From 1963 onwards, the Trig was offered with a more economical diesel engine as an alternative. Since Volvo didn't have the resources to develop an engine of their own, They chose to buy a matching tractor engine from Ford. However, the performance was rather mundane. Both of these lines went until 1975. In 1961, the sturdier L-475 Rask was introduced with a payload of 5 tons. Besides Stark's diesel engine, Rask was offered with a turbo diesel. In 1962, Volvo added the forward control L-4751 Rask tip-top with a tilting cab to the program. This series lasted until 1972. In 1962, Volvo presented the forward control Rask tip-top with a tilting cab. When Volvo introduced its System 8 in 1965, the truck got a new, bigger engine and was renamed F85. Between 1968 and 1974, Volvo offered a budget version called F84 without power steering and with reduced payload. In 1976, Volvo upgraded the truck and renamed it F85S. The S version had a bigger engine and a more comfortable cab. In 1965, Volvo presented the forward control F88. The F88 cab had already been introduced on the predecessor Titan tip-top in 1964, but the rest of the truck was redesigned. This included a new engine, a new 8-speed gearbox, and stronger chassis and suspension. The F88 sold well internationally and began a reputation for durable cab-over trucks. This series went until 1977. In 1971, the larger F89 was introduced with the new 12-liter engine, which development started in 1969. The truck and the engine were designed to meet a West German regulation that put a lower limit for the number of horsepower. In order to continue selling trucks in the heaviest class, Volvo developed a new, more powerful engine, and the F89 was the first Volvo truck to be sold with the turbo engines only. The TD120 engine was so tall that it must be mounted inclined in the frame to fit under the cab. This made it impossible to convert the truck for a right-hand drive. The Volvo F10, F12, and F16 are a series of trucks manufactured by Volvo Trucks between 1977 and 1993. The F10 and F12 were launched in 1977 with many innovative features for its time, most notably a safety cab with high level of ergonomics for the driver. The F16 was launched in 1987 and was more powerful. Volvo manufactured about 200,000 trucks in this series between 1977 and 1993. The series got 2 major upgrades during its production. The first one in 1983, which included major changes to the cabin, a new chassis with decreased weight and parabolic springs, and the spacious Globetrotter cabin was offered as an option. The engines also got an upgrade, but the power output was unchanged. The second upgrade came in 1987, with the arrival of the powerful F16 and some cosmetic changes. The F16 truck had a new 6-cylinder straight inline engine with 4 valves per cylinder and a high-placed camshaft. It was widely used for hauling large train weights, such as timber trucks in Scandinavia. They were also popular in the road trains of Australia. The F-Series was replaced by the Volvo FH Series in 1994. The Volvo FL is Volvo's smallest truck and is suitable for local and regional distribution operations, refuse collection, construction truck, or small format tractor. The Volvo FL has been built since the summer of 1985 in a variety of different models of different weight ratings. FL stands for forward control and low level cab. In 1986, the smaller FL4 also appeared with a 4-liter TD41 turbo diesel engine. Beginning in 1995, some of the FL6 models were equipped with the D12a 250 engine, which utilized a turbocharger as well as a supercharger. This allowed for an unusually high power to weight ratio and plentiful low-end torque. Volvo's larger D7a engine, as fitted to the FL7, could have been easily made to produce the same amount of power, but was considerably heavier as it was the same size as the larger 10-liter D10. Production for this line started in 1985 and is still presently being made. In late 1993, Volvo had unveiled its replacement for the legendary F-Cabover series that was in production for almost 15 years. The development of FH in what appeared to be a clean sheet of paper design took 7 long years. The development of the all-new design 12-liter engine with its overhead camshaft and electronic unit injectors technology placed Volvo among the world's leading engine designers. There were 2 models, FH12 and FH16, which shared common cabs and chassis, and the FH12 immediately won Truck of the Year award in 1994. The 16-liter engine, gearboxes, and the driveline were carried over from the previous generation, albeit with many improvements and a host of additional features, including all-new Volvo engine management and its diagnostics for the D12a engine. From the design angle, the new D12a engine was one of the largest engine projects from Volvo Trucks since the 1950s. The D12a was designed as a world engine to be able to meet the latest demands in high power output, low fuel consumption, and lower emissions with its single OHC design, 4 valves per cylinder, and 1 centrally located electronic unit injector, integrated engine compression brake, and 2-piece steel and aluminum pistons. The engine design left the door open for future upgrades in both power output and emission technologies. This series is still being produced to this day. In 1996, the Volvo Vn, also known as the Volvo Vnl, was introduced. The Vn is a heavy-duty truck that was initially developed in North America and was introduced as the second-generation Volvo Class 8 tractor. For the 2004 model year, the third-generation model was introduced. With a revised hood, headlamps, fairings, and interior, the Vn was officially renamed as the Vnl. Other models included the VNM until 2017 and the VNR from 2017. It was the first Volvo commercial vehicle to be assembled in the United States after the discontinuation of the white GMC brand. It is currently available exclusively for the North American market. In 2013, Volvo Trucks now officially added the VNX, a highest model in the Vn series. In 1998, the Volvo Fm Series was presented. The FM line was originally introduced as FM7, FM10, and FM12. FM stands for Forward Control Medium Height Cab, where the numbers denominate an engine capacity in liters. The FM range is closely related to the FH range, where models share the numbers of components, further decreasing production and development costs, while improving build efficiency and quality of the products. In principle, the FM and the FH, and to a degree the NH cabs, have the same layout, with driver and passenger area, dashboard and seats as the common feature. The lower position of FM cabs is the primary difference between the FM and FH ranges. The FM introduction continued to build on successful line of F7, FL7, and FL10 trucks, and it was also a part of Volvo Trucks Corporation planning strategy for the global family of trucks, where FM would be complementing FH and NHVN truck range. This series is also still in production today. So that, guys, is a good majority of Volvo series lineups since their very first one. Thanks guys for watching, hopefully y'all enjoyed it. Before you leave, like the video, subscribe to our channel, and comment below. What do you think of Volvo's trucks? Need new parts for your rig? Check out our website at jackschromeshop.com, as we have a wide variety of products. If you want to stay up to date on new content coming your way, or just discuss all things chrome, check out the Chrome Corner, Wednesdays at noon, with our host Dave Coleman. Thanks again guys for watching. I'll see you next time. And remember, if your rig don't shine, you don't know Jack.